Did you know that Lower Decks was not the first attempt at an animated Star Trek TV show since the animated series ended in the early 70s? Most people have forgotten about this ill-fated effort to bring back animated Trek. However, I have unearthed a treasure trove of storyboards, character descriptions and concept art detailing what this show would have been about. My name is Captain Robau and this is the story of the cancelled Star Trek Final Frontier. Our story starts shortly after the cancellation of Star Trek Enterprise in May of 2005. David Rossi, Doug Mirabello and Jose Munoz get together to pitch a new series. The trio had worked together behind the scenes on Star Trek for years, and unlike others, did not believe that Star Trek needed a rest. Rossi and his partners hoped their show could help breathe new life into Star Trek. Knowing that CBS and Paramount would not be happy to be pitched an expensive live-action show, the three-man team decided that animation would be the way to go. Inspired by the Star Wars Clone Wars shorts, they wanted to do something similar for Star Trek. Short mini-episodes fit for digital distribution. Their first concept was a show set in the original series era. Executives at CBS and Paramount did not like this idea, however. Rossi then took some advice he had once gotten from LeVar Burton on how Star Trek should always be about moving forward and what is next in the human adventure. So the team took a big leap forward and set the show 150 years after the end of Voyager. This future would be a very different and dark place for the Star Trek universe. CBS and Paramount expressed interest in this revised concept for the show. The trio formed Zero Room Productions and were asked to develop the show further, which they did. So what would Final Frontier's future look like? Well, the galaxy in 2528 would have been a very different place. 60 years earlier, a vicious attack with Omega weapons had ripped apart subspace, rendering warp travel useless throughout much of the Federation. The Federation blamed the Romulans for the attacks, and a brutal war ensued. With large sectors of space impassable at warp speed, the war quickly devolved into the 26th century equivalent of trench warfare, with heavy losses on both sides and little advancement for either force. While eventually a truce was reached, the Federation had become a mere shadow of its former self. The Omega distortions had destroyed key starbases and stranded some Federation planets decades of sublight travel away from their nearest neighbors and the protection of Starfleet. During the war, Andorra was completely destroyed and Vulcan even left the Federation. In this environment, Starfleet's previous thirst for knowledge and determination to better life had been replaced with paranoia and fear. Starships, previously dedicated to seeking out new life and new civilizations, had been reduced to patrolling borders. Their captains trained to shoot first and ask questions later. While this situation may seem bleak, some voices speak up against the Federation's close-minded isolationism, providing a ray of light in the darkness. One such voice is that of Alexander Chase, captain of the USS Enterprise. In contrast to previous Star Trek captains, Alexander Chase was not born on Earth, but on the colony world of Spire, a planet cut off from the rest of the Federation after the Omega attacks ravaged subspace. Spending the majority of his childhood in space, Chase became fascinated with the universe and its mysteries. While his peers were lobbying for command of newer, more prestigious vessels, Chase went out of his way to be assigned to Border Patrol on the USS Enterprise, both for the history of the name as well as the chance to be closer to the unknown. Unlike the other ships that shared its name, this Enterprise is not Starfleet's flagship, but a simple Border Patrol ship. It would not even have the iconic 1701 registry number, indicating that over the years the name Enterprise had lost much of its importance. A Bismarck cruiser that fought in the Federation-Romulan War, Enterprise's aggressive hammerhead-style design reflected a Federation that had gone through a society-changing war. The friendly-looking saucer designs designed for exploration were no fit for a galaxy ravaged by war. The creators of Final Frontier set out to intentionally create a design that fans would not like. It was supposed to be ugly and un-Star Trek-like, but over the course of the show, the hope was that fans would start liking it, because they realized that its crew still stood for the traditional Starfleet tenets of exploration and cooperation. Because Starfleet is more isolationist at the time of Final Frontier, the Enterprise's crew would be mostly made up of human crew members. But as the series progressed, and those ideals changed, more alien crew members would have joined the crew of the Enterprise. The Enterprise's second-in-command, Barrick Holden, is the opposite of Captain Chase. A native of Earth, he staunchly believes in the current Federation ideology that came out of the Romulan War, to protect and defend the Federation and its citizens. Holden's goal ever since joining Starfleet has been the command of a ship of the line. When he was up for promotion, Starfleet instead assigned him to the Enterprise as a way to temper Captain Chase's cavalier approach to their regulations. This has made Holden a bit resentful of Captain Chase, giving them a bit of an adversarial relationship at the start of the show. Kalen Donnell was born on the frontier planet Arcatal, coming from a broken family. Donnell's innate curiosity led her to join Starfleet Academy, where her aptitude for military tactics and strategy flourished. She leads Enterprise's security personnel, whom by 25-28 have taken on the name Redshirts as a badge of honor. Unlike their 23rd century predecessors, they are not hapless pajama-wearing guys who get vaporized every time, but very thoughtful, clever badass soldiers. William Preston is the ship's protocol officer, a new position that stemmed from Starfleet's altered focus on dealing with alien species and border relations. Preston represents, even more so than Holden, the Federation's isolationist ideals. By placing someone aboard the ship whose very job was to uphold those new directives, the creators could use him not only as a voice for those ideals, but also someone for Chase to actively confront and discuss Starfleet's altered stance with. One of the few aliens on the Enterprise at the start of the show will be Chief Engineer Zero, hailing from the mysterious world of Prime, where numbers and equations are not just a way of life, they are life itself. Requested by Captain Chase for his unique skills, Mr. Zero was one of the first officers assigned to the USS Enterprise under his command. Though many of the crew have formed a working relationship with him, Mr. Zero's aloof and alien nature keeps him at a distance from many of the crew, a situation that he's constantly trying to rectify. Aside from the characters and backstory, we also have Final Frontier's first two scripts. These two scripts have their own plot, but each script could be cut up into mini-episodes. Each mini-episode telling its own short story with a beginning, middle and end. The pilot episode begins with the Enterprise on a routine border patrol. When an automated sentry station destroys a ship seeking asylum in the Federation, the Enterprise investigates. They manage to retrieve the pilot, who is mortally wounded. In his dying breath, he asks Starfleet for help. Mysteriously, he's clutching a TNG-style communicator in his hand, a piece of outdated technology that was last used almost a century ago. This intrigues Captain Chase, who over the objections of some of his more conservative senior staff decides to postpone their patrol in order to track down where this alien came from. It does not take long until they encounter another alien ship, but this one is being pursued by a battleship of a different design. The Enterprise defends a small alien craft from the battleship, which is manned by fearsome-looking insectoids. The Enterprise destroys the battleship, but the small alien craft has fled into an Omega distortion. Here the Enterprise cannot follow, so Chase assembles a team, and using the specially designed Dragonfly shuttles, they venture into the distortions. After a harrowing journey through the Omega distortions, the Dragonflies emerge into a calm region of space. To their astonishment, they encounter a Galaxy-class starship adrift in space. The ship is soon identified as the USS Venture, a Federation starship that mysteriously disappeared 65 years ago. After they make their way aboard, they are greeted by members of the same species as the alien that died in the Enterprise's sickbay. They introduce themselves as the Ordrin, a sentient species that is bred to be food of the Verlicon, the dangerous race of insectoids that the Enterprise previously encountered. These Ordrin have sought refuge from the Verlicon on the Venture. They have repaired it as best they could, but they could not get propulsion back online. They ask the Enterprise crew to help them repair the ship so they can all escape the distortion. After repairs are made, the Ordrin and Starfleet crews guide the Venture through the Omega distortions. They emerge on the other side, but the ship is falling apart. To make matters worse, they are ambushed by a fleet of Verlicon ships. Fearsome Verlicon leader Kuruk Sun demands the Ordrin be handed over. When Captain Chase refuses, the Verlicons send a boarding party of harvesters. These insectoid warriors sort of resemble the bugs from Starship Troopers. Donnell and her redshirts valiantly try to defend the ship from the intruders, but cannot prevent the death of Protocol Officer Preston. The Enterprise comes to the rescue in the nick of time, fighting off the fleet and sending over security teams to Kuruk Sun's flagship to blow it up from the inside. The episode ends with the Venture fixed up and handed over to the Ordrin crew. Chase is expecting to be discharged for his actions, but a sympathetic admiral instead sends him beyond the frontier to investigate signals similar to that of the Venture. And Enterprise is again boldly going into the unknown. The second script starts with Donnell and Chase captured on an away mission, being forced to fight off alien warriors in an arena. After some moves that would make Captain Kirk proud, the two officers are rescued by the Enterprise. After this exciting opening, Chase is informed that Chief Engineer Zero has discovered a massive anomaly in a nearby sector. Upon investigating the anomaly, they discover it is a metallic object the size of a moon. Zero and Donald head off in a Dragonfly shuttle to inspect the phenomenon. But then the object starts reacting to scans from the Enterprise. Before they know it, the Enterprise blips out of existence, leaving the shuttle orbiting the sphere all by itself. The crew that were on board the Enterprise wake up on the surface of a planet, their ship nowhere to be seen. They have to fend off large insects and forage for food and water. Zero and Donald meanwhile try to pierce the outer shell of the sphere, having deduced that if the Enterprise had gone somewhere, it would be inside the sphere. On the planet, the Enterprise crew encounter a mysterious being. It is a 4-armed warrior called Yara. He explains that they are the latest of many Starship crews that have been marooned on the planet. Their ships had been picked apart by a swarm of squid-like robots, preventing their escape. This will be the fate of the Enterprise too if they do not do something soon. Yara takes the crew to the settlement the multi-species survivors have created. There they come up with a plan to retake the Enterprise. Chase offers to take some of Yara's people with them. Since they cannot take all of them with them, and the Federation that Chase describes is not too keen on outsiders, Yara declines. This planet is their home now. Chase, Yara and some redshirts go to the Breaker's yard where the Enterprise is being disassembled. They climb the structure holding the Enterprise above the ground and rappel down onto the ship. They have to fight their way into the ship, taking out droids along the way. Outside the sphere, Donald and Zero have finally established remote control of Enterprise systems. They help Chase and his team to retake the ship in an exciting sequence of events. With the ship secured, they lift off before the drones can tear it apart any further. The Enterprise crew transports back onto the ship and Chase says goodbye to Yara, who goes back to his people. With the crew reunited and the ship free from the sphere, Zero makes it so that no more ships can be trapped in the sphere in the future. Aside from these scripts, the creators of Final Frontier had plans for more Season 1 episodes, as well as ideas for Season 2. The show would have an overall arc related to the mystery of who perpetuated the Omega attacks, which sparked the Romulan War. One thing was certain, it would not have been the Romulans, whom the Federation had blamed all those decades. The more action-oriented Final Frontier would need to tell its story in a lot less time than a regular Star Trek episode, so the team envisioned a clipped style of writing and frenetic editing. To provide extra background, Rossi and his partner saw the internet play a role. A special subsite for the show would feature crew logs and detailed histories of the Federation to provide extra background for inquisitive fans. So why was this show never made? Before I tell you, if you have enjoyed this video so far, then please give it a like. That would tell the YouTube algorithm to show this video to more people, and that really helps out my channel. Thank you. Anyway, Final Frontier's demise was a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. CBS and Paramount had just split up, and the rights to Star Trek were stuck in limbo. Paramount had the film rights, CBS owned the TV rights, and no one was quite sure who held the internet rights. The StarTrek.com team was very excited about Final Frontier, but the money would have to come from CBS. Zero Room's first pitch with them went well, and the trio were asked to come up with a realistic budget. The trio met with several animation companies and got budgets for a couple of different animation styles, including a CGI version. Rossi and his partners were hopeful about the future of the show, but the progress was slowed by CBS trying to figure out the rights issues. Disaster struck when in late 2007 CBS Interactive was restructured and the entire StarTrek.com staff was laid off all at once. Suddenly all their connections were gone, and with Paramount focusing almost exclusively on their J.J. Abrams film reboot, Final Frontier was dead. In 2011, the trio were featured on an episode of the Ready Room podcast. Here they explained that while they had enjoyed working on Final Frontier, they also felt that the window to turn it into an official animated show had passed. Final Frontier was a product of its time. The premise of a federation that turned inward and became xenophobic was an allegory for the post-9/11 world. At the same time, the show was also meant to be an allegory for the state of Star Trek itself. Like Final Frontier's Federation, the Star Trek franchise had moved beyond its glory days, and only by returning to its roots could it be restored to its former glory. Star Trek being revitalized by the reboot movies, they felt that Final Frontier's premise was not as relevant anymore. Still, they loved what they had created, and they would love to turn the project into a comic book, if a publisher was ever interested. Sadly, in the decade since, nothing has come of this. I am Captain Robau, and that was the story of Final Frontier, the Star Trek animated series that was never made. What do you think? Would this have been a worthwhile Star Trek TV show, or was it better that this series was never made? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to explore more undeveloped concepts like this one, click one of the videos on screen.